Oh, that beer looks tasty. Here we are again, folks. It's your favorite coach, your favorite host, all things favorite. Why not? I got to be in your face. If you don't have a favorite, why not let it be me? I'm Chris. This is Conversations with Chris, and where I have conversations with people that I find interesting. And one of those people is Robyn Maniscalco. Thanks for joining us today. So
Thank you
I
for having
appreciate
me.
it. It's, you gotta, it's got unique that you have a day off during a week like this, right?
Yes.
I know you got a lot going on. So tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your story and kind of how you arrived where you are today.
So so basically I founded a company that is an online community that I help families with resources and support and guidance to help manage everyday care, basically looking for ways to simplify everyday life because caregiving can be a nightmare and a full-time job in itself. So
Mhm.
um, that's what I do. And
It's
I founded the company out of the frustration myself with me and my family when my mom had a stroke and we had to literally just stop everything and kind of become her full-time caregivers and figure out what to do and how to navigate this completely new environment. And it was a challenge. So learning what I learned over those couple of years, I've taken that and I want to bring it to families to help make their life a little bit easier and also to know that they're not alone because it's a very lonely world, even though you're surrounded by people and you may have friends and family. But unless you're really deep in the trenches of caregiving world, you don't really you can't really fully understand it and grasp it. But also there's different levels of caregiving, right? So you have those that are special needs where you need to care for them on a pretty regular basis, mobility issues and whatnot. And then there's preparing for what may come. So I tend to cover a rounded umbrella of all of that so that I can help people not be so blindsided when something does happen, and then knowing that they have a team of people by their side when it does.
this is something that I never thought of. You don't think of it. I think that's most people. They kind of don't think futuristically of, hey, we've got parents, we've got family members that something might happen and we might now need to be their caregiver. They're here with us, they're still alive, and they can't function alone. So um you mentioned your mom had a stroke, and that was kind of like the eye-opening moment for you, and then you went through it, and I mean, you found that there just was not a lot of resources available to people. And
So it's you know, researching resources became a full-time job while dealing with my mom. And when you're in hospitals and doctors' offices, you don't always have the best Wi-Fi. So it became like a second full-time job on top of my we're already 9 to 5. So it became it consumed me and I learned a lot. I kind of became, an expert in all of these little things that I never thought I'd need to know about, but it has helped me and other people around me tremendously. But basically, it was just eye-opening and you go through life. I mean, my mom was 69 when she had the stroke, so she was not that old and she was fairly healthy, didn't have anything major going on with her. She just had a few factors and we now know that there was a genetic marker in there that all of it kind of together created this little perfect storm for her to have this severe stroke. But you think you're prepared and you think you have time and I'm sure you've heard of the guy down the block who might have been fixing something on his roof and fell off a ladder and suddenly he's paralyzed, or somebody gets into a car accident that's 21 years old and now they're in a wheelchair, or they have mobility issues. You hear these stories and you think it'll never happen to you. And most people think that when they go to an attorney, and they get their will drawn up and their trust, and that's all great. And if you have a lot of assets, it's something you need to focus on. But you think that that's enough of being prepared, and it's really not. Because at the end of the day, if you're somewhere with your significant other or your child and somebody's getting hurt, do you have this pamphlet of
Mhm.
documents to take with you? Is that going to be your first instinct to let me go run home and get my power of attorney and healthcare proxy? No, you're going to deal with the emergency in front of you. But one of the things that is our little niche is that we work with people so that when things happen, you you already have things set up where hey, all my documents are electronic. This is where I have them. This is where I store them. This is what's going on. I've already had these conversations. So for us, I kind of look at being prepared in three parts. First one is having the conversations with you, especially if you have elderly parents or seniors that you care for, and your significant other.
Mm-hmm.
Having the conversations is a very important part of it. Getting information that you need, what's available to you, and then executing it all, putting it all. Once you have everything, you have the information, you've had the conversations, you know what needs to be done. How do you execute it, and how do you have it available to you in a timely manner when it's needed? So that's our focus for being prepared.
That's, I mean, you mentioned, I mean, for example, you mentioned one of the things that you might not think about that you need, and that's certain documents that you need. What are some other things, just to kind of, because this is foreign for most people, what are some other things that people might not consider that they should be prepared for if something like this happens? And by the way, just I want to put your website up there. What's the best way for everyone to get in touch with you?
Yourcaregivinganswers.com.
For caregivinganswers.com. Awesome. So what are some of the other things that that people should be aware of that they're not thinking about?
Something as simple as a bank account, for example, right? Everybody's got checking accounts, savings accounts, etc. It's in your name. You may have a joint account with your significant other. That's great. You may have a custodial account with your children. So if you have more than one person on it, you don't necessarily need to do this. But if you have an individual account, you should absolutely have a form, and every bank has it. It's called payable upon death or transfer on death, depending on the bank. It's just a form that says that if you pass away, this person should have full access to be able to clear out all the money out of your account. And all they need is to prove is with your death certificate. It avoids some of the probate and I'm not an attorney, so I will put that disclaimer out there. But basically, you'd want to consult with your attorney if there was any probate or state issues. But this is a simple form that you can do today. Some of the banks even have it online, where you're just delegating that if something happens to you, this person has access to your bank accounts. That's something that's simple. We created a family agreement. When my mom had her stroke, she was in a coma for 3 months and then a vegetative state for 8 months, which is where you're semi-conscious for more than a few minutes at a time. We didn't know her wishes when she came out of all of that, almost a year later. And she had told us she didn't want a male nurse bathing her. For her, she grew up in a very, conservative time frame, right? Where her husband was the only person that should ever see her, naked. And so we didn't know that was her wishes. So having something like a family agreement where you're discussing, who would be the person responsible for bathing this, the parent or child, if this person was incontinent, who's going to be the one changing diapers? Yes, most people will have an aide or a nurse, but oftentimes those aides and nurses are there for a certain amount of hours. It's not common to get coverage for 24 hours. So oftentimes families do need to contribute in some way. And just figuring out who would be responsible for dealing with the billing, the household bills, things like that, where a nurse wouldn't be responsible, but those things need to be get done for mom or dad, right? So having a family agreement is something I highly recommend to all of my clients. And just who's going to be taking them to doctor's appointments, who's going to be checking prescription refills, things like that. Because as people get older, with all different kinds of medical diagnoses, right? It could be anything from dementia, a form of dementia, to having mobility issues. And I know with my dad, I'm even been concerned with scams that he could fall for, and checking credit card statements. Like, what is it that you're spending money on? Is this a legit expense? I mean, not that I'm auditing him, as to what he's allowed to spend his money on. It's his money, but making sure that he's not being scammed by somebody. So many people get these scams, and it's crazy. So it's just figuring out who should be in those lanes within the family. And maybe there's not family, maybe there's extended family that you need to reach out to.
It's interesting because as you're talking, I'm thinking, I mean, I'm a business coach. I look at organizations, and the family's like an organization that you're where you're kind of stuck with your employees, right? So organizations have policies and procedures in place that if someone should be out, or someone gets sick, or maternity leave, things like that, where where these things going to be delegated to. And it's interesting that I think nobody really thinks of the family unit this way. And I think this is a valuable thing for, even if being a caretaker is far from your brain. I mean, it's something, it's just good peace of mind to have in place. That's awesome.
That's literally what it comes down to, is having peace of mind.
Yeah, it's
Because
like,
when you're in knee deep and you get a phone call that literally could change and rock your entire world, there was an accident, somebody got hurt, somebody,
mhm.
you are extremely emotional. Your mind is in a million places. So having things set up in advance to know that, hey, when that call comes through, it gives you just a little bit of peace of mind so that you can spend your energy and time focused on what is going on, like medically, what is our next steps. And most people, that will be their focus. But I know with my mom, when she had a fall, and she ultimately died from a fall, being on blood thinners. She had a bleed in her brain. So she was on, the life support. And one of her wishes was that she didn't want to be on life support. And if there was no brain activity, she should come off life support. We're at the hospital, a very emotional time, saying our farewells. And the hospital tells me they can't take her off life support until I give them the paperwork. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it's the middle of the night and I got to run home, get paperwork. And it was that was where I learned to have everything electronic,
Yeah.
because you know what, if I was in the hospital that night and I had everything scanned in and saved, on a shared document site, cause there's so many out there.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been, I could just be like, here you go. But instead I had to go all the way back home. It's already, you're in the midst of everything. You don't want to have to worry about the simple things like paperwork, because the hospital needs it.
Man, I never want to worry about paperwork ever. I
Yeah.
put that off. You're talking about like digitizing everything, and
Yeah.
one of the things I did for my kids, somebody had told me when I had kids, gave me the idea. It's like a digital time capsule where I created my kids when they were babies, like a Google email address that has the Google Drive and all that, and all through the years, just being able to save pictures and letters and things to this Google Drive. I think that's not a bad idea to have for every single one of your family members, just kind of this digital time capsule. And why not have something for important papers and healthcare proxies and all that kind of stuff that you need? Nobody thinks of this stuff. Thank you so much for telling us about it. What else are things to look out for while everything is good, while people are still here with us, alive and functional? What are some of the other things that popped up that somebody wouldn't think of until it happens?
Well, I mean, there's, like you said, storing and saving information, setting up a
Okay.
Google account or some sort of email account. That I had one client who literally set up a Gmail account. She uploaded a bunch of videos. She did little videos with stories for certain things like jewelry or certain sentimental things around the house, that she was saying she wanted this person to have this, and this was the story behind it, etc. And then had certain, like, basically had all of her wishes done in video. She didn't want to put anything in writing.
Okay.
And then she just had an envelope, and she said to her child, and said, if anything ever happens to me, you open this envelope. And it was the password. It was the email address and the password. And
Okay.
basically this way, then at that point they would have access to it.
What did I do?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great idea. And it costs you nothing. People are like, oh, I can't get this stuff done, I don't have the money for an attorney. There's so much technology at your fingertips that you don't necessarily have to, go to an attorney and get these doc. Of course, you want to protect yourself, but if you don't have the means to pay for some of these things, you can do. They sell at Staples wills, forms, things like that you can get done. There are all kinds of apps that are available nowadays, where if you are sharing caregiving, if you're a parent, if you're a divorced parent, right, and you have children, and you want to, one parent goes to the doctor, and there's apps that you can put notes in there and share with this person. Was this doctor's appointment? This is what was said. This is what was prescribed. Yada yada yada, and they put it all in there so that the other parent can read it and access it at any point if they, if they can't be there live. Or let's say, the mom usually takes the kids to the doctor, but now the mom's away, dad's got to take care of it.
Mhm.
And the doctor's asking questions about the medical history. It's all there in the app. You
Yeah.
have it all saved. It's all available to you. Um, there are different, you can have shared tasks, right?
Mhm.
There's another app that you can share, like it's like they say it takes a village. If you don't have somebody that doesn't have a lot of family, or somebody that has a very big family. I know with my family, I have three sisters, so there was four of us and my dad. So between the five of us, we divided up a lot of everyday
Mhm.
tasks so that it wasn't too much of a strain on just my dad. So there's apps for that. Like, hey, someone needs to pick up these prescriptions. Somebody needs to do the food shopping this week. Where I'd get together with my dad. We list out all the tasks, what needs to be done for the week, and then we'd all split and take it. Who's doing food prep, who's calling billing insurance companies, who's dealing with that. Like, you just divide and conquer, and it just makes things a little bit easier. And it's you enjoy life where you don't want to have to worry about when these things happen, right? Like, because you don't want to live in fear. You want to enjoy your life, but the reality is these things do happen. So why not prepare yourself for when it does happen, so that you can be like, hey, you know what, that app that I hardly ever use, well, here it is, now I need it. That folder, that Google Drive that I used, well, now here it is, I need it. Even something as simple as sometimes just having somebody else take a look at your situation and say, I had one client that basically told me I changed the quality of life for her entire family. They lived in a two-family house. The mom lived on the first floor. She was legally blind, completely blind. So I just and they could never leave her fully alone because somebody needed to go downstairs and check on her always. I told her to get a Google Home. We used it as an intercom with my mom, and use it. It's all in the same house, same Wi-Fi. It would work. And the woman loved it. She could ask the Google Home the time, the weather, the date, tell it a story, the news. Just she can intercom with a family upstairs. She can have Google Home call people, and then it becomes a speakerphone. So I mean, there's just simple products out there that can change, uh, and so the my client was basically like, now I can run to the store because she can call me
Mhm.
through this device. I don't have to make sure there's somebody always in the house with her in case she falls or yells, somebody's got to hear it. She can now call us. And so it's just sometimes just analyzing from an outside perspective, saying, hey, this is a little bit easier. I
Yeah,
mean,
sometimes
we
it's just
had we had been told, my mom at one point, when we were kind of picking her up and lifting her, putting her in a wheelchair, and they were telling us to just hold her by her pants. I'm like, you're going to tell me that this pair of like $10 stretch pants is the safest way for us to be pivoting her and putting her in a chair? Like, that's not okay. And so I found online they have like a belt with all these straps that when you're lifting somebody, it's easier on your back. You don't have to worry about material ripping, and it's safe and has straps on it to move them. And a lot of medical staff know of these things. They don't necessarily know to tell you. And a
Mhm.
lot of times when families go to doctors and they talked about what's going on, they're not always stressing, hey, this is a big challenge in my household. Lifting my mom and putting her in a wheelchair is a challenge. Is there something out there? You don't go there and discuss that because you usually have 15, 20-minute appointments. They're going through the medical stuff and you're in and you're out. So
Yeah.
who's giving you this advice? I mean, even just something like state of mind, right? Like my mom was the woman of the house. So she grew up in the 50s. So for her, the cooking, the cleaning, all of that was in her nature. So when she had a stroke and she was paralyzed on one side, she felt like a burden and felt useless, like she couldn't contribute at all. I found a potato peeler that literally goes on your finger like a ring, and all she had to do was go like this, rub the potato, and it would peel it. Took her an hour to peel that potato, and we were pretty much done cooking dinner by the time she finished it. But she had such a sense of accomplishment, and she felt like she contributed, that it gave her such a different mindset, like she was just like, oh, I can't. It helped with her depression. So that's the other thing that you deal a lot with being a caregiver, and also with patience, is the mindset.
I can
And
imagine.
I know you know a lot about that.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's what it all comes down to. It's how you think about things, and this just being prepared for this stuff just helps you get right into the all hands on deck mode, and not have to worry about the little minutia, which is a kind of, I think the last thing you want to do is be bogged down while you're going through an emotional thing already, having to think logically and put all these things together. So, thanks for putting that together and making it really like easy for everybody to access. And I did put the link down there in the comments if anybody wants to click on it and take a look. Like I said, it's not that these are things you don't think of. I know you've got a book on the horizon. You've wrote books. You've got something coming. What's next for Robyn? What do we got coming in this book? And I know you're putting together some other things, maybe a podcast, a video broadcast. Tell us what's coming next.
So I do have a book in the works. It's called Her Story, My Why, which is basically my story, like my mom's story, and then my why, the reason I started this business, the lessons I learned during those 3 years as being her caregiver, and the eye opening of it all. The emotions, the up, the down. It's kind of going through the journey with me and my family in that book. It's a way to connect and for people to be like, you're not alone. And then these are what we learned from it. I also am starting a podcast. So I will have a podcast coming out, and we will be interviewing experts in their field, as well as giving some information, some tips, some tricks, and some things to help caregivers. And even if you're not a caregiver yet, it's information that's helpful to you. Knowing is half the battle, right? I feel like that wasn't that a tagline from a cartoon in the 80s?
Yeah.
What was it? Knowing is half the battle, and it's just so true, because what you don't know can hurt. What you don't know can hurt you. And isn't it better to have conversations with people when they're healthy and well, and they're in their right state of mind to get clarity on what they want when the time comes where you need to make decisions? I mean, like nobody ever wants, it's a morbid, dreaded conversation, but we give our clients, ways to bring up conversations, like examples of how to, start the conversation with your family, and then get into it. It's not always easy, but if you can make it fun, make the conversation fun and interesting, or make it, you can have some jokes in there, that's what we learn to do, because if you don't find some light in all of it, it's just going to eat away at you. Like, you need to
Yeah.
find, a silver lining somewhere in there.
I find jokes and everything, and sometimes I'm inappropriately humorous and funny. But I mean, with Thanksgiving and this holiday season up to New Year coming around the corner, maybe there is going to be opportunities to kind of have these conversations. Could you give us an example of what would be like give us a setup? Yeah, I have a script and role play practice on Wednesday mornings that we do, and we love these things, conversation models. Give us an example of a conversation starter with somebody in your family where you might, maybe a parent or a grandparent or even one of your kids or a spouse.
Well, oftentimes what I tell my clients is starting a conversation based using somebody else's story is the best way to really see somebody's viewpoint. If you sit down and say, "Hey, I want to discuss, how do you feel about life support? How do you feel about this?" People are going to be like, "Get out of my face. I don't want to talk about death, blah, blah, blah." But if you say, "Hey, Mr. Smith up the block, his family had to deal with making decisions, and it was so hard, and and share your own thoughts. Start with, for me, I would want, I don't want to be on life support, or I do want to be on life support, or I want to, be frozen," whatever it is that your wishes are. Start with your own wishes and opening up the conversation. And if you're sharing first, it's easier for other people to share their wishes as well. I mean, and then you go off in a little corner and you start jotting it down, right? Like, it doesn't, at least you've had the conversation. You can always formalize things later on paperwork and getting a healthcare. One other thing is, I do recommend that everybody should have is a healthcare proxy, and you can get the form online with your state. I have forms as well. You should, because if something happens to you, whatever it may be, and for some reason you can't make decisions, one of the things that we learned with my mom was we had more rights if she had died than we did when she was in a coma. It was crazy, because we didn't have all of the paperwork in play. We didn't know. And had we had all this paperwork in play, we would have been okay. But we had to fight, and we had a battle with things. Even just, you would think, okay, her husband was there, he was her spouse, but there was times where decisions were where it was a fight. And you want to avoid that because you're already dealing with a stressful situation. So having having the conversations, you can make a game out of it. I mean, we at one point when we were talking about being incontinence, and I think one of the kids in the family made up a song about going to the bathroom, and then it became like a family joke, and they started singing it to the little kids who were trying to go to the bathroom. And then when my mom, when she was having incontinence issues, she would sing the song, and it was just it just became like a funny memory, about going to the bathroom. But things that stick with you, and you never know what's going to stick. Yeah, role-playing conversations is definitely, although it's role-playing with this, you don't know how someone's going to react oftentimes. So you want to go in, kind of lightly, whether it's something you're watching on a news. If you see something, like when I see scams or anything, or I see something that came through, and I'm like, hey dad, did you know about this scam? The blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, and I'm like, well, I want you to, I just want you to know it's out there, because he's pulling for a few. And
can you believe that I'm the descendant of a prince of Uzbekistan?
Yeah. I mean, and you think, my dad was a very intelligent guy. He's got his master's, CPA, highly educated, and worked for a Fortune 500 company for 30 plus years. But then as they get older, they start to become a little bit more susceptible to things, and they just, it's more easy for them to get scammed. And you would think, how did he fall for that? And
I think it's easy for any of us unless we're trained, because if you're a good person, if you're like because I'm not naturally conditioned to look for people being scamming or anything like that. I automatically think that everybody is kind of real and authentic, but we have to, and I think as we get older, we kind of revert back to like who we are at our core. And if we're honest, and we would never think of that, we don't think it's going to be coming in our direction. You don't. So that's awesome that you do that. We're coming up on our time here, but let me ask you if you've got any parting words or anything I didn't ask you, something that you want to share with this group, or another way for them to get in contact with you. Let me know. So any parting thoughts for you?
My advice to everyone is don't wait. If you never know, life is too short, and things can happen, and you just being prepared as much as you can is something that will help guide you when you need it, and knowing you're not alone. We are putting out we have a kit, a little packet that I can share with your audience. It's a family care kit, and I'm happy to send it out to all of you. You can reach out to us at yourcaregivinganswers.com or the familycarekit.com, and then you can download, and they'll send you the download. So it gives you a little bit of some information, some free tips and tricks and things that you should know.
Familycarekit.com.
Yep.
Okay, it says the domain is for sale. Are you selling it?
No. Hold on, let me double check. It should be.
Familycarekit.com. Yeah, it's all good. That's good. You gave a lot of good advice, and I think one of the big things that starting these conversations with a story, your story, in saying that, I think your story is a story that should inspire everybody to do something like this. Just even if they don't know anybody personally, just hearing what you went through and saying, "Look, guys, I went through this. I was that person. I wasn't prepared," and that's huge.
It's familycarepacket.com. I apologize. Sorry about that.
No problem. Familycarepacket.com. All right, cool. There it is. All right. Yeah. And that's, all right. Let's do this.
And they can sign up and they'll get in their email, they'll get it.
Perfecto. Excellent. So yeah, I'm going to put that right here in the comments. It'll be if you're on Facebook or YouTube, you'll be able to have access to that. Boom. There it is. All right. All right. Good stuff. Well, thank you so much, Robyn. Robyn's on social media. You're going to be, as you kind of release other things, I know you've got this podcast coming out.
Yep.
You'll be able to share with us and all that kind of stuff. So we're looking forward to it, and keep on keeping on. And this is thank goodness for people like you that get us to think about things we're not going to think about. So.
Yes. Unfortunately, things happen, and you gotta, like I said, you're going to grab a folder and take it with you. No. So be prepared in other ways.
Yep. Ask questions, have those questions, use stories, get those forms you need, and start a little digital filing system. We're looking to these apps or technologies that can help you. So you don't have to, while you're thinking about it now, and you don't need to, we're getting into the holidays, start preparing some of these things, looking into it for yourself, so. Man,
and we have a list of those apps on our website. We often give discounts to certain resources and things for our clients, and so just reach out. We're happy to help.
Perfect. Yeah, that family caregiver packet's great. You'll have their email. You'll be able to communicate when you have other things coming out. But thank you so much for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day off, or is it? I don't know. Bye, Robyn.
Thanks. Have a great day.